This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
When it comes to painting armies or board games, most of us just want to get our models done fast. But with so many tricks, techniques, and products designed for speed painting, it can be hard to know what to use and when. Today, we're going over the 8 steps you need to know for speed painting, including one tip at the end that I wish I had listened to when I first started my first army. Before we start painting, it's crucial to plan your approach. The first question to ask is, will you be using contrast or speed paints on this model? If the answer is yes, pay close attention. The effect of contrast paints can vary greatly depending on the base color underneath, so it's important to consider the overall look you want to achieve. For a more saturated and vibrant appearance with equally bright shadows, a base layer of white is recommended. However, if you're aiming for more intense shadows or a grim, dark vibe, applying a zenithal highlight, as seen in the slapchop technique, will give you the best results. If you don't plan on using speed paints, think about the primary colors you'll be using. For colors like red, yellow, or orange, a white base coat will help those warm tones pop. Alternately, if you are painting a model like a Space Marine that's predominantly one color, priming the model in that specific color can streamline the painting process and give a more uniform finish. When it comes to applying your primer or base coat, the fastest method is to use an airbrush or a rattle can. These tools allow you to cover models quickly and evenly, which is especially useful when painting a large number of miniatures. However, if you're working on just a few models or don't have access to an airbrush or rattle can, painting the primer and base coat by hand will also work. Consider the number of models you'll be painting before deciding on a technique. If you're frequently painting a large number of miniatures, investing in an airbrush might be worth the time and be cost-saving in the long run. When speed is your top priority, using the box art for color inspiration can save you a lot of time. Instead of spending extra hours searching for inspiration and creating a unique color scheme, simply following the box art provides a quick and effective solution. While it might not be the most revolutionary or original approach, every shortcut counts when you're aiming to finish your model quickly. With the box art as your guide, it's time to choose your paints. However, instead of stressing over matching the colors exactly, use what you have on hand. Perfect color matching isn't necessary for great results. Mixing paints can be time-consuming, so simplify your painting process by selecting the closest colors in your existing paint collection. This approach reduces decision fatigue that can come with endless color choices. With the paints chosen, it's time to start painting. I'm beginning by applying a blue-gray base coat to the cloak, carefully avoiding other parts of the model. This area is large and smooth, so I plan to use a wash on it later to create natural shading and depth. While I could potentially use a contrast paint here, I'm cautious when it comes to large, smooth surfaces. Some contrast paints can work beautifully on these areas, providing smooth gradients and shadows, but others can be unpredictable, sometimes leaving streaks or blotches. I'm not willing to take the risk on this model. I'm applying my washes later, but I'm still counting this all as a single step.
Painting an army can be hard work, but creating a stunning website is easier than ever with Squarespace's new guided design system, Squarespace Blueprint. Choose from professionally crafted layouts, customize them to reflect your style quickly, and utilize Squarespace's drag-and-drop fluid engine for enhanced control. Seamlessly integrate your social media and accelerate your growth with integrated, optimized SEO tools. Seriously, Squarespace Blueprint is magic, and I can only dream of army painting one day being this easy. So whether you're selling online courses, physical products, or just showing off your work, get some time back for painting your army by using Squarespace. When you're ready to start, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, use code LYLAMEV to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Alright, back to painting.
While the base coat dries, let's talk about contrast and speed paints. These paints are designed to provide both color and shading in a single application. They flow into the recesses of a model, creating natural-looking shadows while leaving the raised areas with a more vibrant color. This makes them ideal for areas with intricate details like fur, hair, or textured wood, as they can highlight these features quickly. In general, these paints are my default choice when it comes to painting quickly, unless there is a specific reason not to use them. A few important tips for applying speed paints. I prefer using a dabbing or sponging motion rather than a pulling motion like you would with normal paints. This technique helps prevent coffee staining, though the effectiveness can vary depending on the color. You can learn more in this video here. Also, once you've applied your speed paint, be sure to quickly remove any excess pooling and then don't touch it. Speed paints and contrast paints can be very fussy, and any attempt to fix them once they start to dry can often lead to disaster. For an extra dose of speed, you can use wet blending with your speed paints or contrast paints to create a greater variety of colors. Here I'm blending a bone color into a brown color to better match the coloration on the box art. Just remember to sop up any areas where the speed paint has pooled too much to avoid uneven coverage. Lastly, I find it easier to put my contrast or speed paints into a silicone fidget popper. These help keep the paints contained, prevent them from becoming diluted as they would on a wet palette, and once the paint dries, it easily pops out with very little mess. Metallic paints are perfect for speed painting because they naturally catch the light, giving areas like armor, weapons, and machinery an eye-catching shine with minimal effort. A single coat of metallic paint combined with a wash creates stunning depths and highlights quickly. Find a good metallic that has full opacity in a single coat, like Army Painter Fanatic or Army Painter Metallic Speed Paints. While areas with a lot of texture and raised detail are perfect for speed paints, they can also be excellent for another technique, dry brushing. Dry brushing involves taking a small amount of paint on a dry brush and lightly dragging it over the raised areas of a model. This highlights the details, giving them a weathered or textured look. One of the strengths of dry brushing is that it can add more variety than speed paints, as it can be applied in several layers, allowing you to use different colors to achieve different effects. However, dry brushing is less suitable for smoother or large flat areas, as it can leave a chalky or scratchy appearance. Additionally, it can be less precise, so it's not ideal for areas where you need to maintain clean lines or sharp contrasts. For the best results while dry brushing, I recommend using a dry palette for your paint as well as a dampening pad for the perfect amount of water in your mostly dry brush. Then a texture palette to remove excess paint. If you're new to dry brushing or want to learn more, check out this video here for everything you need to know about the technique. Okay, back to washes. Washes or shades are thin, translucent paints designed to flow into the recesses of a model, adding depth and shadow to the details. They are perfect for adding quick shading to areas with lots of texture, such as fur, hair, or sculpted pattern work. I often use washes on areas where contrast paints can be less predictable, like the large surfaces you see here. Here I'm applying a Dragonhof Nightshade to the blue fabric using the same dabbing motion I discussed earlier for contrast paints. I slowly move down the model, allowing the wash to pool in the recesses where I want it and sopping it up where I don't. This cloak is right on the edge of where I would typically use a wash, but in this case it works pretty well. If you're worried about a wash being too intense like I am for the collar, you can thin it down with a bit of water to create a more subtle shift in contrast. Additionally, I like to use a wash over metallic colors to add instant shadows and depth, enhancing the overall look of the metallic effects. One important aspect of using washes is that they darken not only the shadows but also the highlights. This can sometimes make the model look flat if left as is. To counteract that, it is often necessary to re-highlight key areas after the wash has dried. For this model, I'm going back over some of the high points with the same base color I originally applied, gently layering it back on top to bring out those lighter areas. With the washes applied, it's time for some final touches to draw the viewer's eye to key areas of the model. Our eyes are drawn to the brightest parts of a model, So whatever is the most interesting element should be the lightest and therefore stand out. On this model, I'm adding extra highlights to the face using white and applying silver edge highlighting to the metallic area on the staff and dagger. These subtle pops of brightness make the model look more complete with minimal effort. Hi. Yes, I see you. Your concerns have been noted. The reverse is also true. If an area isn't important, paint it dark. For most models, the lower 50% isn't the main focus, so you can apply a dark wash to those areas and move on. In this case, the base is quite detailed, so I couldn't use that approach here. However, this method is a quick way to minimize distractions and keep the viewer's eye on the most interesting parts of the model. But there can be times where layering in itself is the right answer, specifically on large swaths of fabric that won't work with washes or contrast paints. On these areas, there's nothing that can beat plain old layering. You can learn more about layering in this video here. Before I call him done, there's one last step. Speed paints and washes often leave a glossy finish, which I find quite annoying as it can detract from the overall look of the model. To counter this, I like to apply a matte varnish over the entire model, excluding metallic areas, of course. This final step helps unify the model's finish, reducing unwanted glossiness and enhancing the overall aesthetic. Before I show you the final model, let's talk about my super important side note. Before committing to a color scheme or technique for an entire army, it's always wise to paint a test model first. This allows you to see how the paints behave on your chosen base color and refine your methods before moving on to the rest of your models. It also ensures that any new models you paint will match your current army, so you don't end up having to redo an entire squad like I had to. And here is the final model. If you like what I do, you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Go join me on Patreon. If you want to learn from me in person, I will be teaching at Dragonfall Con in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, the first weekend in October. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.